someone is lying. These people are telling the truth. My goal is to bring out the fullness of the truth of the knowledge that has been suppressed from us. I have spoken to dozens of insiders who have worked in highly classified so-called government programs run through the military-industrial complex who have had first-hand contact with extraterrestrials. And I look them in the eye just like I'm looking you in the eye right now, and you can tell when someone is lying. These people are telling the truth. The scope of the cover-up is so vast that what we think we know about UFOs and this whole subject constitutes but a very small portion of the actual activity that is taking place in and around our Earth and our solar system right now.
So when we talk about disclosure, it's such a loaded word for a lot of movies, a lot of different things. How would you define disclosure in its most ideal form?
Ultimately, I believe that disclosure is a process that does not happen in one sudden thundering moment. It's an ongoing event. Now, the conventional view that you hear about disclosure is that this is going to be where the President of the United States gets on national television and tells us the truth. That's very likely to be one of the last, if not the last stage of the process. And there will be many intervals before that, which we are already seeing. Inside these classified government programs, they are doing something called PRI, or Processed Release of Information, which is a deliberate effort that has been ongoing since the Roswell crash in the 1940s to plant these seeds of truth into the mass consciousness. What's happening is that alleged science fiction since the late 1940s has been embedding the truth in these storylines so that once we finally do get disclosure, we discover that we have been getting disclosure all along. So disclosure is an ongoing process, and it is very interesting to note how many movies are actually written in which the idea that UFOs are not real is treated like a joke. Everyone in the movie laughs at people who don't believe, and extraterrestrials being real are used in many, many storylines for a variety of movies. Extraterrestrials being a fact of reality is presented in a wide number of movies. I remember watching the remake of Godzilla, and extraterrestrials had a lot to do with the remake of Godzilla. Most of the Transformers movies have had very shocking amounts of truthful information in them. And there was an X-Files series reboot in which the whole first premiere episode is absolutely loaded with all kinds of stunning information. The X-Files series reboot in its pilot episode that just aired in January 2016 had an incredible body of disclosure, everything from aerosol, chemtrail type spraying to Federal Reserve, financial collapse, extraterrestrial reality, abduction. It was just unbelievable, and we're seeing more and more of these kinds of things coming out now. So the effort for disclosure is a very interesting, almost schizophrenia in our society, in which if even one person who's had a sighting is actually witnessing some sort of extraterrestrially piloted craft, then you have to assume now that there is much more going on than just that one little peak. And that means that there could be a much greater amount of information to know than even what most of mainstream ufology has collected. You have to remember, the data that we have in the UFO field, such as about Area 51, this might be only one or two whistleblowers that come forward with stuff like this. People photograph it from a high mountaintop far away. We can't get in there. We can't see inside the facility. We don't really know what they're doing. But what's happening is that there are more and more insiders who have come forward, and they have independently spoken to me off the record. I've cataloged what they have to say, and I have memorized and in many cases notated vast bodies of information without putting it online. And the reason why is that when someone new comes along and they start saying all the same things or many of the same things, that's when I know that they are all speaking based on a common body of knowledge. And the scope and the complexity of these correlations between different data sets from different insiders is so vast that I don't believe it is possible for this to be a cover-up. The Occam's razor argument, slicing through to the simplest possible explanation, is that this stuff is actually happening, that our government is in direct contact with a variety of human-looking extraterrestrials, that they have already gotten joint bases both on Earth, inside the Earth, and on moons, and in some cases solid planets in our solar system. There is a very widespread amount of technology out there, including stuff that our own military-industrial complex has built. They have their own deep space ships, some of which are 2.5 kilometers long, cigar-shaped. This stuff, we have a whistleblower now, William Tompkins, who actually came forward as his aerospace engineer background gave him the blueprints that he designed these ships from. He's presenting us with those blueprints, showing us these cigar-shaped craft, which are identical to the ones that Corey Goode has referred to as having worked in when he was in the Solar Warden program. And William Tompkins independently gave the code name Solar Warden for the program. Then we also have Gary McKinnon, the UFO hacker, who independently finds the name Solar Warden when he's hacking the Pentagon through looking for UFO documentation. So this Solar Warden code name was also embedded within a list of non-terrestrial officers, people who are of military rank and designation, but do not work on Earth. Now, you start to put the pieces together, you start to see what everybody's saying, and this is the disclosure process. We are doing this right now. With you watching this show, you are part of that process. This process is not going to happen by the official level until it has been wrenched out of their hands. It is the last thing they ever want to do is to completely tell us the truth, because court cases will then be filed. Charges will then be made. If you look at the LIBOR scandal, where the top mega banks have been accused of colluding with each other to rig their prime interest rate so that they can look good in their credit scores and misrepresent themselves to investors as if what they have is a very solvent company, when in fact they're all bankrupt and it's a big Ponzi scheme. You look at the fallout from LIBOR, which the mainstream media does not talk about. We are seeing multiple multi-billion-dollar lawsuits that are being prosecuted and fined against these banks, and it has very seriously impacted their bottom line. They're not going to be able to do another bailout. They're not going to be able to do another TARP. The public does not want that to happen. So there is a situation going on right now in which we can actually see an example of a corporate mega entity that is essentially buying its time, but is almost out of time right now. And when the time runs out, what we're going to find out is that not only have we been lied to about the scope of financial tyranny in our world, we have been lied to about extraterrestrials, because that technology that has already been taken in by our government includes free energy. It includes solutions to every problem that we have here on Earth. We can desalinate ocean water with very low energy yield. We can then pump that water into the deserts and literally irrigate all of the dead areas of our planet. We can completely clean up the Pacific garbage gyres, these gigantic areas of plastic that are just circling around and getting eaten by seagulls and whales and all types of marine life. We can eliminate any need for fossil fuel. We eliminate greenhouse gas emissions. There are technologies already in possession of these secret space program groups that eliminate any need for pharmaceuticals. You have pain relief technology in which you interrupt the potassium-sodium balance in the nerves. You don't need any analgesic drugs. You don't need to take any drugs at all. The only thing you would really still need to have the medical community for would be surgery. But all other types of medical illnesses can be treated by advanced technology that is already in possession of these people. That leads to longevity. That leads to life extension. If we want to become an intergalactic and interplanetary species, if we want to take the ships that are already built and use them to travel throughout the stars, we need to expand our lifespan. You're not going to be very successful if you only live for 60 or 70 years to go out on a deep space mission like that. They have the technology to dramatically enhance and extend our lifespan. They have the technology to allow us to travel through portals, to be able to go from point A to point B, even across vast numbers of light years, nearly instantaneously. We literally have all the tools in front of us right now for a Star Trek era. The only reason why we don't have it of light years nearly instantaneously, we literally have all the tools in front of us right now for a Star Trek era. The only reason why we don't have it is that our planet, unfortunately, is being run by a sociopathic cabal of people who actually believe that humans are bad for the environment and they need to dramatically reduce population first before they release these technologies. Their goal was to bring us down to our knees so that we were so desperate for help that by the time they give it to us, they can instill total control and have absolute dominion over everyone. That's not going to be allowed to happen. There is an alliance here on Earth of very powerful entities. This actually includes a majority of the U.S. defense establishment, and I'm also talking about organizations that most people think of as negative, like the CIA. There are very strong, positive groups within all of these different intelligence agencies, the NSA, the DIA, naval intelligence, you name it. And what their goal is to work with this international cartel that has formed. Let me say that differently. And their goal is to work with this international alliance of countries that are outside the Western system directly and have seen that, in fact, we are being ruled by a Ponzi scheme in which they just print money out of thin air, do as much as they want. That's really the problem here. We can't allow these people to continue to make as much money as they want without having any collateral behind it. So once we get some further steps forward in the disclosure process, once the efforts of this alliance, this international alliance, get to the next level, there will be data dumps, there will be volumes of information released that will shake our beliefs to their core. They will challenge everyone. And what can happen right now is by you listening to this and educating yourself about the truth and about what is really going on in our world, you can help to calm people down when this disclosure comes out, because some of the material is so upsetting that there will be people who do not want to get out of bed, they do not want to eat. I call it the man in the bedroom. Imagine your loved one, you walk in there and there is someone else in bed with that person, and you had no idea that this was going on. We are taught to love these politicians. We are taught to aspire to be like them, think of them as great. People cheer in massive crowds at these political rallies. Now when we find out the scope of the betrayal, we find out that these people have not only been lying to us, but they've actually been deploying a weapons system into our food supply. They've deliberately added things to processed food that decreases lifespan, increases lethargy, fatigue, laziness, decreases your IQ, decreases your motivation. That's why it's very important to eat organic food, to try to eat as natural of a diet as possible, stay away from the processed stuff. This is a war. These people are trying to kill us. And if you can understand that, then recognize that once the truth comes out, it will be in the context, very likely, of these people having been arrested on a massive level. There's all kinds of logistics about how that's going to be done, when that's going to be done. It is a massive operation, and I am not authorized to give all the details away. In fact, I did leak details about mass arrests before, and unfortunately, I compromised at least 2 different operations because I leaked too much that was classified. I got people killed. So I'm not going to say all of the details now, but we do expect, there are certain things I can say. We do expect there's going to be a blackout. We do expect that all the power is going to go off for a while. During the time that the power goes out, there very likely will be military operations taking place in all of the major American cities. Those operations will most likely be occurring in places where this financial cabal is concentrated the most, and you can kind of interpolate from that what I'm saying. It is very likely that the lights will not be turned back on until the operation has been completed. So everyone is being advised to have approximately 2 weeks of storable food and water on hand, because there may be a temporary disruption of goods and services. The way I like to look at this is, if you throw up, you'll feel better. This is a situation in which it is akin to a coup, but it is a positive counter coup against a group that has secured political control of our planet in an astonishing fashion and has been far more successful with it than most people realize.
So when you talk about the cabal, or this group, can you give us any identification of who might belong to that?
Sure. So what do I mean when I'm talking about the cabal? One of the names that many people are familiar with would be the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, the New World Order, the Illuminati. What are we really talking about here? Ultimately, we are talking about organized crime. We are talking about crime syndicates that work on a quasi-governmental level because they do not take any of their high-ranking people and actually run them for office. The people who run for office are never more than middle level within these corporations. We have multiple insiders, whistleblowers, some of whom I've spoken to directly, who have witnessed American presidents acting like simpering little wimps in front of these higher-ranking cabal members because they are terrified of them. This cabal has at its core, believe it or not, a Luciferian belief system. You say to yourself, who in the world would possibly want to construct a religion around Lucifer? Well, it's very clever. It works like this. You have ancient mystery school teachings, and the ancient mystery school teachings date back to the legendary civilization of Atlantis, which is real. We now know, for example, these ruins in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, are at least 13,000 years old because we've carbon dated the dirt that these stone circles were dug out of, and we know they've been buried for 13,000 years. We can no longer deny that, in fact, there are ancient stone monuments that predate any civilizations that we normally know of here on Earth. And the problem is that whoever built these pyramids had the whole civilization, the technology to build it right out of the box. We don't see a gradual progression where we're looking for shards of pottery and we're trying to find how we can retrace the footsteps of a civilization that takes the necessary thousands of years to build up to the point where it could do highly technological acts. No one has been able to build pyramid-like structures with those large blocks of stone with today's technology. The largest cranes in the world can't lift them. The Japanese tried to do it at 1/5 scale and they completely failed. They could not build a Great Pyramid replica at only 1/5 the size. So somebody had advanced technology. The implication is that this technology was not local to Earth, but that this was a refugee group or multiple refugee groups who actually came to Earth, perhaps on the run from a cosmic battle of some kind. And in fact, this is the occult secret story of Lucifer, Lucifer the fallen angel. And in fact, there is a secret book that was withheld from the Bible called the Book of Enoch. And in the Book of Enoch, what you hear about is a race of cannibalistic giants who crash landed on Earth and are called the fallen angels. And they are, in fact, eating people here on Earth, but they're twice our size. They were ordered not to reproduce with the women of Earth, but they did anyway. And what ends up happening is that the women give birth to this new race that they call Nephilim. And this is mirrored in the book of Genesis, but the book of Enoch has a lot more in there. And we now know that this is a genuine, authenticated ancient text because independent copies that say the same thing and have been backdated have been found in Ethiopia and other places, such as by the Scottish historian Sir Robert Bruce, going way back to the 1700s. So this book explains that a group of people came here from somewhere else with advanced technology, and that they did, in fact, set up control systems here on Earth. The Book of Enoch is a predecessor to Genesis, which also has Noah's Ark and the flood. In fact, Enoch is Noah's grandfather. So what appears to have happened is that this great flood was authorized. The Atlantean flood wiped out the civilization of Atlantis because Atlantis was a colony. It was not native people that had originated here on Earth. It was a vast civilization that had transplanted itself here. And when they came here, they brought with themselves all of their books, all of their ancient texts that go back 500,000 years, the full record of their civilization. Now those texts were stored in the Library of Alexandria in Egypt because some of these people did survive the flood. And then the Romans sacked and burned the Library of Alexandria, but before they burned it, they took out all the good stuff and they relocated it to the Vatican Library. So I have insiders who have actually sat down with me and described to me going into the Vatican Library and reading books that were made by extraterrestrial civilizations before they ever came here. These books include highly technical diagrams of interstellar spacecraft and gigantic motherships. And these books are very, very ancient. Some of them have mylar type of pages, very glossy. Some of them are actually holographic. You open them up and this image just comes up and it can show you, it interact with your consciousness, tells you what you want to hear. Anything you want to know, it'll just show it to you. So you have to understand now that the repository of these documents is in the Vatican. Therefore, there are people who are on a need-to-know basis who actually have access to that knowledge. They understand that they are the descendants of an extraterrestrial race that came here, that had elongated skulls. And you look at the images of the Egyptian pharaohs, like Akhenaten, like Nefertiti, like their daughter Meritaten, and what you see is this highly elongated skull. We have scientists like Brian Forster who are in Peru, and Brian Forster is actually finding new examples of these skulls with elongated craniums. And whereas the normal human skull has 2 fissures, these only have 1. They have all kinds of anomalous features, including we have these nerve plexes that come out of our jaw here, whereas they have it at the back of their head. These do not appear to be anything having to do with head binding. So the point is, elongated skulls show up all over the world. They have been found in Boskop, South Africa. They have been found in Siberia. There are graves of royalty in France that have been dug up in which they have elongated skulls. Elongated skulls have been found in North America and South America. They are literally worldwide. And so what we're really dealing with, and I write about this in my new book, The Ascension Mysteries, the whole second half of the book, 250 pages, is a comprehensive diagram of the 500,000 year history of these people, where they started, how they got here, how they turned into the Cabal. So it literally does appear, as strange as this must sound, that there are people with extraterrestrial physiology, elongated skulls. Some of them have lost the elongated skulls, others still have them. And if they still have them, they wear these mitre hats that you see in the Vatican. They never take those hats off. So you couldn't tell if somebody had an elongated skull under that hat. It does sound really bizarre, but just imagine now that you tell a group of people secretly that they are the descendants of an extraterrestrial race that were the gods, that had many tens of IQ points higher in intelligence than everyone else on Earth, that spread themselves out across the world, that became the prevailing ruling caste everywhere. They had advanced technology when they first got here that allowed them to circumnavigate the globe, to build pyramids, to build elaborate structures. Not all the pyramids were built by negatives, but there are some that were. And they effectively created dominion over the earth. They have been defeated by what we call the Elohim, these positive extraterrestrials you hear about in the Bible and other religious texts, again and again. The Elohim have caused mass catastrophes to happen, Sodom and Gomorrah being another example, fire and brimstone coming out of the sky. These things are not mythological. We know that the earth has periodic catastrophes. Some of these catastrophes apparently have been authorized in order to dramatically reduce the ability of these people to control our planet. But there is a remnant that is still here. They are very advanced, and they have an internal cohesiveness that tells them that they are the chosen, they are the elect, they are the given special people. So what happens when you have a religious group that is taking iconography from various cultures, including the Egyptian trinity of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, taking Celtic mythology, taking Asian mythology, taking Hindu mythology, putting all this together to try to distill the best out of it? And then along comes Christianity. And this teacher, Jesus, comes along and says that this has to stop. He's overturning the tables of the money changers. He's essentially rewriting the covenants. Then, in the aftermath of that event, you have an organized society that rises up in which all of these ancient mystery schools are said to be evil. These ancient mystery schools believe they're the chosen ones. And so when they saw the institutions of church suppressing science, suppressing sexual freedom, suppressing independent thought, asking you to conform or die, creating these very intense inquisitions in which people are tortured and forced into confession, they believed that the church itself, and therefore Jesus, was actually evil, and that they were good. So what they did is they went into the Bible, and they said, well, then who's the good guy? It must be Lucifer, the god of light, the god of wisdom and truth. Why was Lucifer thrown out of heaven? Because he rebelled, because he saw that it was a setup, that it was all rigged, and that was evil. So they believe, and this, you got to understand, whether you believe this or not is irrelevant. This is their religion. This is what they actually believe. I've talked to many people who've given me different pieces of information about this from firsthand insider sources, or they themselves are firsthand insiders. These people honestly believe that they are the descendants of gods, that they are the chosen, that they are God's special people, that we are delusional, and that the true creator is this wisdom principle that they think of as Lucifer. That wisdom principle gave us ancient mystery school teachings, and that the enemy, which they call Adonai, the adversary, which we would call the Christian God, came to try to defeat them. Then they even take it a step further, and they look at texts like the Bible, and they say that where it says in the end times that God will take the money from the wicked and restore it to the just, that we as a planet are the wicked and they are the just. So this is how they justify their financial corruption. They don't believe that we deserve the money. In fact, they believe that if they did not dominate us and if they did not control us and play all these games, that we left to our own devices would destroy our planet. So in some twisted rationale, they believe they are saving the earth. They believe humans are bad for the environment. We cause pollution, so they have to reduce population. Then they seed that into movies like The Matrix, where Agent Smith says that humans are like a virus on the planet. This is one of a variety of ways in which they will usually embed their teachings into the villain. Look at the Batman Begins, the latest new series of Batman films that came out in the past. In the first Batman reboot movie, again with Christian Bale playing Batman, it's the villain who actually articulates the Cabal's perspective. It's the villain who advocates population reduction, who describes why these things are necessary. Then look at the second one, where you have Heath Ledger playing the Joker. Everything about what the Joker says in the second Batman film is totally what they believe. They actually believe that creating these fake terrorist attacks that kill large numbers of people, that is a sad but necessary evil that they have to do in order to secure control of us, to prevent us from destroying the whole planet. You have high-level people who believe this adamantly and are financing things like vaccines that actually have cofactors inserted in them that over time can be combined with other cofactors to try to create population reduction. So this is a very serious problem, but it is not just the internet community that is hip to this. That's another thing I really want to point out here. There has been a very powerful, high-level counterinsurgency within the highest levels of government on Earth that has been going on since the 1700s. It started in Russia. This is really where the alliance against this cabal got started. And that alliance has been working on plans that must take many, many years to complete. The people in this cabal have used secret societies like the Freemasons, in which they guard their secrets through complex rituals in which the person who is an aspirant to that order has to learn how to keep a secret, has to learn secret handshakes, secret passphrases, secret codes. And what that does is it creates a body of people from which you can do recruitment to the Vatican Library. So I have insiders who have actually sat down with me and described to me going into the Vatican Library and reading books that were made by extraterrestrial secret codes, and has to learn how to keep a secret, has to learn secret handshakes, secret passphrases, secret codes. And what that does is it creates a body of people from which you can do recruitment. Because when you recruit from these people, they have now taken a blood oath that if they ever betray the secrets of the order, they will be killed. And when you go up to the 7th degree in Freemasonry, which is called Royal Arch Masonry, you swear that you will do anything within your power to free a fellow Mason from harm's way, even if he has committed acts of murder or treason against his own government. So this is perfect, because when you get up to, like, for example, the 30th degree, there was a book called Light on Masonry that was published in the late 1800s where all this stuff came out. It was actually the mid-1800s. And that book listed all of what people hear in Masonry all the way up to 33rd degree. When you get up to 30th and 31st degree, they say that the goal of their organization is to crush the head of the serpent of religion. Now, granted, organized religion has caused a lot of problems, but what they really mean is not that all religion should be excluded. It's that they want to make it so only their religion exists on earth, and if you don't follow their religion, you will be killed. So what they've been doing is they've been giving us their religion. They show it to us in, for example, the most recent Olympics opening and closing ceremonies was loaded with Cabal symbolism. They do it at the Grammys. They do it at the Super Bowl halftime show. They go out there in music videos and movies and video games and television shows, and they're showing us Luciferian symbolism. The reason why they're doing this is that they want us to become entranced by the idea of this religion, to have it be cool, to have it be trendy. So one of the things they do is this symbol, which is 666. Each finger is one of the stems of the six. So you'll see people do stuff like this. You'll also see them put their finger over their eye like this. It's the all-seeing eye. Or they'll do this a lot. You'll have this kind of symbolism. So they're out there putting out these sigils and signs and codes and symbols, and they do it through things like pop music. So people start watching what's ever popular, and they're seeing flames, and they're seeing people dancing around in Baphomet horns, and they're seeing all this really strange stuff. Their goal, again, is to acquaint us with their religion so that if they get their goal realized, which is to create a massive world economic collapse, greatly reduce population, and then come out as our liberators, giving us this technology, giving us what they consider to be freedom. We would actually be trading our sovereignty for a much greater level of tyranny. Thankfully, people such as the Russians, as I said, since the 1700s, have been aware that this plan was in place, and they have been actively working to stop it. That effort is now so organized and so vast that there is no chance that the Cabal has to pull through this. They cannot realize their goals. They are being defeated, and I have meticulously traced on my show, Wisdom Teachings on Gaia, so many examples of how they're doing this. I've also written many, many articles, insiders from the Alliance talking about what's going on, revealing this knowledge to us. So there is going to be some sort of a major event, a mass arrest, and once that happens, they have 26 DVDs worth of information, of shows that will be airing on all the cable channels that will be actually featuring, in many cases, surprisingly high-ranking public figures that we all know who have done this covertly. Some of them will be military political leaders. And they will be on these films telling us all this kind of stuff that I'm telling you right now. And it's going to be a massive awakening, but it appears that this will be very positive because we will be coming into a reality in which the arrests have taken place. And the Alliance has done some very high-level telegraphing of their move. To wit, check out the movie Iron Man 3. In Iron Man 3, Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Iron Man, does what? He finds out that the Bin Laden character, played by Ben Kingsley, is actually being hired as an actor. And he's working on a green screen. And the Vice President of the United States of America, who looks surprisingly like Dick Cheney, and the president in that movie looks surprisingly like George W. Bush, he is frog-marched out of the White House in handcuffs at the end of the movie for financing this fake terrorist. Now, that movie, Iron Man 3, was the biggest movie of the year when it came out. Then we have the movie Captain America, the Winter Soldier, which comes out the year later, and again is like the #1 movie of the year, other than Hunger Games. And in that movie, the whole entire thing is essentially a documentary that's true about the Alliance and the work that they are doing to defeat a cabal that wants to kill many, many people. In the movie, the cabal has these flying aircraft carriers that are going to shoot holes in everybody with lasers through the medulla and kill you. And those people are stopped. And at the end of the movie, there is this big trial in which some of the people from this organization that defeated SHIELD, which really is supposed to be the NSA, are on trial. And they say, look, we're the best that the Earth had. We needed to step up and solve this problem. So in that Captain America movie, SHIELD becomes like the NSA. Even though in the previous movies it was good, halfway through that movie, Captain America, you have a whole little documentary inside the movie wherein Captain America and Scarlett Johansson's character walk into this German base in which a intelligent computer tells them about Project Paperclip, that Nazi scientists were brought over here after World War II to America and were embedded into our society. Those scientists actually ended up taking over the military-industrial complex. They act as if it's still America, when in fact they're pursuing their agenda. And that is what SHIELD turns out to be in this movie. Now, this is a major mainstream film that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make. And my point in expressing this is, if you want to know what the Alliance is up to, they've already showed you. They've done it in very large movies. They're telling us the truth, and it does appear to be building up to some sort of event. And once that event happens, films like this are going to be taken far more seriously by far more people, because whoever was talking about this before it actually happened is now going to be validated, and we're going to see that they were telling the truth.
How do you know the good guys from the bad guys? And when Beyonce is doing her symbol, like how do we know if she's mimicking it or supporting it, or like, it's very confusing for people. Do you have any suggestions?
I would encourage everyone to not blame the musicians who are displaying these cabal symbols. And I want to bring out one example. The female artist Kesha, I'll just go with Kesha. The female artist Kesha put out a video called Die Young, where she is dancing in front of a pentagram and singing about that her goal is to party so that if she parties hard enough, she'll die young. And she was quoted in the media as saying that she brushes her teeth with Jack Daniels. Okay, so it seems that this is what she wants to do. This is the video that she wants to make. So Kesha has the video Die Young out there in the public where she's dancing in front of a pentagram, which appears to be what she wants. It's her video, right? That's what we're trained to think. And then we get the Sandy Hook school shootings in which little children have had their brains blown out by gunmen. She gets so distraught, and they end up actually pulling her video and her music off of the airwaves because of the tragedy of Sandy Hook. And she's singing about children dying young. She gets this overwhelming amount of comments. Every single article you see about her when this happened after Sandy Hook, Illuminati bitch, just like boop, 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 hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. She must have been bombarded with people saying to her that she was a satanic Illuminati Luciferian sellout. So she comes forward in a public statement not too long after the Sandy Hook shootings and says that she was forced to do those songs, to sing those lyrics, and to perform in that video. She was not the one who wanted to dance in front of a pentagram. She was not the one who wanted to write the lyrics, I Want to Die Young. She was told what to write. And then, this is the really important part, she comes out later on and said that she was raped by her producer, this man named Dr. Luke. Now, Dr. Luke has been a producer who has actually, in many cases, written the music for the vast majority of the most popular female pop stars in today's world. That's why all the music sounds alike. It's written and produced by the same people, so they have the same style, so yes, it all sounds. Has to learn saying to make everybody be bang on pitch. What happens is that Kesha ultimately files a lawsuit against Dr. Luke and says, and also against Sony, saying that nothing was done to stop her from being raped and that she wants to be free of her recording contract so that she can record independently as an artist. The case is thrown out of court. She loses. Sony wins. She's not allowed to get out of her record contract. And this happens right before very significant video music awards that take place. Then what happens? you have some of the people who would normally be associated as Illuminati pop stars, Luciferian pop stars, like Katy Perry, like Taylor Swift, like Rihanna, like Lady Gaga, who all come out. Taylor Swift gives her, I believe, $250,000. Adele, in her award speech, speaks out in support of Kesha. Lady Gaga does a whole musical performance. What If It Happened to You was basically the point of her song about rape, and she's like crying on the piano. Now, these are the people that we would think, in most of the conspiracy analysis community, well, yeah, Lady Gaga wanted to be dressed up in this outfit with devil horns, and she wanted to be drenched in blood, and she wanted to have flames around her. No, what you're finding out is these people are doing what they're told to do. They want to have a career, they want to be famous, and once you get into the system, they just wear you down little bit by little bit. You keep giving up more and more power, more and more control. You know you're in over your head, and they keep your mind saturated with drugs and alcohol so that you are not capable of making intelligent decisions about your future. And you're so numbed out that you don't even really remember most of what's happening to you, and they just put your body on a tour bus, and if they can prop you up on stage night after night, then you're cranking out all this money for them by going on a recording tour. So this is the stuff that's really happening in our world today, and therefore I would encourage you to not blame the artists, but to look at the labels themselves. How is it, for example, that American television companies continued to give Bill Cosby television acting jobs for so long when there were so many reported rape cases that he had committed? We have the same thing over in the UK with Jimmy Savile, who was on Top of the Pops in the 1960s, is a very active television star through the 70s, in the 80s, on into the 90s, a huge celebrity. And there are over 2,000 people who have come forward to report that he raped them as children. And he was doing this in hospitals that he financed, in special rooms. And certain people have come forward in the Express, which is one of the main British newspapers, came forward and said that he was wearing a black robe, that there were candles in the room, and he was chanting in Latin, Ave Satanas, which means Hail Satan, as she was being raped in this ceremony. That's public record. So the British government has been doing a variety of investigations of all this stuff, and what they found is 261 figures of public prominence, top politicians. In fact, I believe it's over 60 politicians were involved in this thing. Hundreds of celebrities. Some of the celebrities, yes, are involved. Some of them are brought in against their own will. High-level executives. This thing is pervasive through media, government, finance, military, politics, pharmaceuticals, agriculture, food. It's a very complex problem. And a lot of people immediately want to look away when they encounter this information. They say, this is overwhelming. In fact, and she's given me permission to say this now, my own mother, when I would talk to her about this, she said, David, I don't want to live in a world where this is true. And I said, Mom, you can't change the fact that these people exist. The evidence is right in front of your face. Now, some people do not want to look at it, and I respect that. But I honestly can tell you that if you are not willing to look at this stuff, you are part of the problem. Because you are burying your head in the sand. You don't have the courage to face the adversary. I studied martial arts for 5 years. I studied a very advanced form of martial arts. And what I learned in that teaching is you do not back down. You face the enemy head on. That's why I'm on this camera. I'm talking to you about this stuff right now. I am prepared to go out there in public and put my name behind this. And I want to say something else. One of the things that I learned from whistleblowers, from the cabal itself, is that they have to work within something they call the rules. And this is very, very important. So I really want to make sure that this gets into the film. The rules are a body of spiritual principles that they must follow in order to be allowed to exist. Now, what do I mean by allowed to exist? I mean that they are aware that there are benevolent forces that will prevent them from achieving their goals unless we give them permission to enslave us. Now, think about that. Well, I didn't give them permission. Why, for example, was there a document on display in the British Museum Library of London in the late 1800s that comprehensively lays out a plan for 3 world wars, during which time they will consolidate a Luciferian New World Order? And those 3 world wars are precise descriptions of World War I, World War II, and a third war in which they believed that most of the major countries have been eliminated and consolidated, and the only group left is going to be rogue mercenaries, which we would now call terrorists. They didn't use that word, but it totally describes Gulf War I, Gulf War II, the war on terrorism. That's World War III, because the rules state that they have to tell us what they're doing. Therefore, if we allow it to happen, we have consented to tyranny, we have consented to enslavement. Now, if you get into the secret history of the cabal, this was rediscovered by Queen Elizabeth, the original Elizabeth that we've heard about from the 1500s. Queen Elizabeth's royal astrologer, a man named John Dee, who is the prototype of the wizard with the long beard, the hat, and what he did was to rediscover, through these ancient documents that were in the Vatican, the technology of how to access what they considered to be spiritual beings that were useful to them, but what we would consider to be demonic or evil beings. These beings need to be accessed through a very complex set of rituals and ceremonies. You cannot just ask for them to show up. You have to follow very elaborate and specific protocols. If you follow those protocols, it's like having an IP address, which is what we use to go online in order to notate a website. Every website has its own IP address. These spiritual beings, such as Baal and Moloch, which they still do ceremonies for today, such as in Bohemian Grove, there is a giant effigy, stone effigy of an owl. That's the god Moloch. The god Moloch goes all the way back to Rome and Carthage, in which they were offering child sacrifices to this god in exchange for power. So John Dee rediscovered the technology of how to draw the magic circles, how to say the right incantations, how to actually do black magic on a governmental level. This is what people are going to have so much trouble with once disclosure happens, is that these people actually practice black magic, and they are very, very good at it. The main principle of black magic could be distilled down into what you see happening with voodoo. When you see a voodoo attack against someone, what do? They make a little doll, and the doll is an effigy of you. It's supposed to look like you. And then they have a pin through the heart, or they do something to mangle the doll to make it look like it's been injured. They put that doll in a place that you're going to be going through every day. You see the doll, and if you believe that that evil has power, if you become terrified and you believe that this is actually something that's going to happen to you, then you attract the disaster. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what really is going on here is that we have massive, massive creative power. Our thoughts actually do manifest reality. So the rules are that they use 2 components, imagination and will. They seed our imagination with a particularly desired thought form, and then they create events that fire our will into that thought form to actualize it. Now, let me give you an example, because this might not make any sense. Okay, they seed the imagination, let's say, with the idea that guns kill people, guns are bad. Therefore, we take away all the guns, and nobody's ever going to die again. Everything's going to be great. Then, in order to actualize our will, they've seeded that thought form, gun control, gun control, gun control. But they are not going to lose their guns. And how do we know that we can trust them, especially after the Snowden disclosures, where we have the open admission that there is an international cabal that is actually spying on all of them to make everybody be bang on pitch? What happens is that Kesha ultimately files a lawsuit against Dr. Luke and says, and also a bulk collection, which means they grab spying on all of our electronic communications. We can't trust them to be able to use that responsibly. They're not getting a warrant. They're not getting a court order. They are doing bulk collection, which means they grab everybody's data, everything that we put out there electronically. They have all of it. If at any point in the future you are suspected of a probable crime, they can go back through extrajudicially and access everything you've ever said and done. And even if you just so happen to accidentally click on a link on a web page that I've done it. Sometimes your finger hits the button, you didn't intend it. You loaded that web page, and it's this, let's say it's a hate site of some kind. Now they can say, well, look, David Wilcock went and accessed this hate site. Clearly, we can now establish that he was into this stuff. So let's go back to the example of gun control now. The first stage with imagination is that they tell you guns kill people, therefore take away the guns. Then they create a fake event, a mass shooting, which is staged. They already have the emergency crews on hand. They already have the whole thing lined up. The cover-up is already in place. They manage the event. They control the media. They black out people's cell phones. People don't understand why they're not getting a signal. It's an EMP block. This is the kind of stuff they actually do. So nobody can be taking pictures and filming it while it's happening. Then the event happens and everybody's traumatized, and then they release the coded phrase. They say, guns are the problem. Guns are the reason why these people died. Therefore, we need to take away the guns. And then everybody says, oh, yes, thank God. Take away all the guns. This will never happen again. Every single fascist overthrow of a country in history started with some form of confiscation of the tools that the people had to protect themselves, whether it was guns or other forms of weaponry. They make it illegal to have defensive tools. And that is why the founding fathers of the United States of America, written right into the Constitution, the Second Amendment, is that you have the right to bear arms, because they knew about the cabal in its British form in the 1700s. So let's get back to the Queen Elizabeth astrologer John Dee again for a second. John Dee discovered the technology. It's an ancient technology. It's in the form of ritual magic of how to access these spiritual entities that will do work for them. So one of the things that insiders have told me was that 2 different times, massive armadas of Spanish war galleons were sailing through the seas towards Great Britain. And they had guys on high pedestals who could see this through their little telescopes. And John Dee was in direct contact with these entities. And Elizabeth says, what do we do? Should we deploy the army? Should we go fight them? Twice in a row, John Dee says, don't send out the armies. Don't do anything. It's all going to be fine. So they just sit there. And this is a real faith test for whether John Dee is accurate or not. Spanish galleons are sailing in. This massive storm shows up. And the storm is so vicious, the lightning and the thunder and the roiling, boiling sea, that the entire Spanish Armada was completely wiped out. And this happened not once, but twice. So what is that? That appears to be extraterrestrials who have weather modification technology, who can be accessed if you know the IP address, if you know the code, if you know the right ceremonies. And then they will do your bidding, but you end up paying a terrible price for it. You end up losing your soul. And in fact, the groups that work with these entities invariably end up being destroyed, and that is written right into their symbolism. The symbol of the eagle. The original American bird was not the eagle. Benjamin Franklin wanted to be the phoenix. The phoenix is the symbol of the cabal. Why? Because the cabal must be burned to ashes, seems to be completely destroyed, but it keeps arising and reincarnating from the ashes. It comes back. So part of their religious belief is that in order to get their new world order, they must be publicly exposed. They must die for their beliefs. They will appear to be wiped out. And they actually believe that these extraterrestrial gods that they've been contracting with all these centuries are going to return, and they will be glorified. They will return in light bodies, and they will actually now be the rulers of the earth. So this is part of their religious belief. Now, why am I saying all this? Because if you are watching this video right now, you are part of the resistance. You are part of the movement that is awakening. My job is much like Morpheus in the movie The Matrix. The word Messiah, okay, is a plural. This is something a lot of people do not know. It was never intended to be one figure. The Messiah is you. If you are awakening, if you have the courage to spread knowledge, to spread the truth, to educate and inform people about what is really going on. The game is designed on purpose, that it requires a messianic team. It requires a vast initiative of people working together in order to make this happen. There needs to be, as you say, a collective evolution. We have to do this as a team. It cannot be one person. It was never designed that way. It is an organized effort of sharing the truth. And here is one of the most important principles that I heard from a guy in the cabal directly, who was a whistleblower. There is a cosmic law that is absolutely irrefutable that says that the cabal is not allowed to shoot the Red Cross workers. Now, what does that mean? The planet itself is sick because of folks like the cabal. Ultimately, the universe is intelligent, alive, and conscious, and it is benevolent. It is a benevolent consciousness. That consciousness does not allow the negative to succeed unless it is invited. So the cabal has made a science, a very elaborate science, out of studying these arcane, occult, magical principles that allow them to get away with what they do. So they have to put out everything that tells you who they are in music videos, in these Super Bowl halftime shows, the Grammy Awards ceremonies. They're out there showing you the truth. When you look at the latest Olympics opening ceremonies, you have James Bond 007, Daniel Craig, who is with Queen Elizabeth in her little royal Buckingham Palace. And then Queen Elizabeth ends up going with James Bond into a helicopter. The helicopter, there's a scene that they show everybody in the ceremony where the helicopter flies over Britain. And then in the actual auditorium, the helicopter flies overhead, and a man dressed up in the same outfit that Queen Elizabeth is wearing when she sits down, this pink dress and a white wig with the curls, he parachutes out of the helicopter. Now, what the heck was that? 007 is actually a cabal symbol. It represents the penis and the two testicles, okay? The 00 is the testicles, the 7 is the penis. And there's another name for this, another secret name called two-ball cane. And what that means is literally two balls and a cane, which is the phallic symbol, 007. John Dee was the original 007. This was his code that he used in all secret communications with Queen Elizabeth. So that whole sequence represents John Dee, the original wizard, the original astrologer, the man who discovered how to do black magic, to teach the cabal how to access these beings so that they could secure control. And then what happens? She is the fallen angel. She parachutes out of the helicopter, a spaceship, and she parachutes down into the auditorium. So again, people don't realize how elaborate this belief system is. They don't see that in the Olympic ceremonies that they built this pyramid, that they had all these symbols, including people that were like partly reptilian, that was in there, all kinds of interesting stuff. So I want to point out that this cosmic law that they cannot shoot the Red Cross workers is why I am alive. People have said to me, David, you're so brave, you're so courageous. I would agree with that. It's taken me a lot of courage to come out here in the face of multiple death threats over many years and to speak this. I'm not using a pseudonym. I haven't changed my name. I don't use a voice decoder or anything like that. It's me. I'm here. You can look me up. I'm a real person. So why am I still alive? I actually believe the stuff that I'm telling you. I would not be doing this if I didn't believe that this really works. I have had spiritual contact in the form of dreams, visions, and synchronicity. See that in the Olympic ceremonies that they built this pyramid, that they had all these symbols, including people that were like partly reptilian, that was in there, all kinds of interesting stuff. So I want to point out that this cosmic law that they cannot shoot the Red Cross workers is why I am alive. People have said to me, David, you're so brave, you're so courageous. I would agree with that. It's taken me a lot of courage to come out here in the face of multiple death threats over many years and to speak this. I'm not using a pseudonym. I haven't changed my name. I don't use a voice decoder or anything like that. It's me. I'm here. You can look me up. I'm a real person. So why am I still alive? I actually believe the stuff that I'm telling you. I would not be doing this if I didn't believe that this really works. I have had spiritual contact in the form of dreams, visions, and synchronicity, spying on. I actually believe the stuff that I'm telling you. I would not be doing this if I didn't believe that this really works. I have had spiritual contact in the form of dreams, visions, and synchronicities my whole life, and I have been documenting my dreams every morning since 1992. I have learned the language of dreams. I have learned how those dreams convey to me information that I need to know about my soul, the soul's evolution. I have had so many cases of dreams giving me accurate information, guiding me through every obstacle that comes my way, predicting the future in advance with stunning clarity. And I have been told for many, many years that if I maintain my integrity, if I stand behind my mission, if I stand behind my message and I do not waver, in other words, I don't have a secret personal life that is different from what I'm representing. That means I'm not out there ripping people off. I'm not out there womanizing. If I tell you that I do not do alcohol and drugs, that is true. I have been chemical free since 1992. If I were to start violating these principles and go around getting myself high, womanizing, stealing people's money, lying to them, these kinds of things would then authorize the cabal to take me down. And they would love it if they could, but there are positive extraterrestrials who are essentially what we could call angelic beings, and those beings organize and maintain this so-called illusion, which we believe to be very compelling and real, the life that we have on Earth. It is an illusion, and it is intended for our spiritual evolution. One of the great laws is the law of balance. The spiritual beings that manage our illusion cannot allow the negative to ever be more predominant than the positive. They balance the illusion quite specifically so that at any point, any person has equal opportunity to seek the positive or the negative. So what I would say is, in your left hand is death, and in your right hand is life. If you choose to see death, you can go around, you can look at the people and the situations on Earth, and everywhere you look, you can find examples of decay, of collapse, of pain, of selfishness, of fear. And that can become something that you write into your mental monologue to such an extent that all the time you are obsessing on these details. You keep invoking the details. In your other hand is life. You can just as easily, and this is designed on purpose, you can just as easily look for positive things in the world. You can find those things, and you can choose to conclude that you live in a positive reality. So the law of balance means that either choice is available to you, and we are here to make the choice with equal opportunity in either direction. As we get towards this great exposure of the cabal and what they have done, the choice becomes far more poignant because there's much more information available now about this so-called cabal, about this so-called Illuminati than there ever was before. There are people who want to learn about this, and they end up going down the internet rabbit hole, which can very quickly lead to paranoia, anxiety, insomnia, morbid depression, because you feel also that once you are awakening to the truth that they are listening now, that NSA surveillance is directed at you. You are at risk. You are under threat. Your phone calls are being monitored. Who's that guy in the car over there? When am I going to get the knock on the door? Is my car going to drive over the cliff one day? Look, here's the bottom line. So many people are making these videos now. So many people are coming out with the truth, with their real identity. The cabal cannot begin to try to harm these people or take them out. In fact, they definitely do not do that because they don't want a Jim Morrison or a Jimi Hendrix. They don't want another John Lennon. They don't want somebody who comes out into the open and gives us a positive message who is then taken away because they know that person then becomes a hero. So instead what they do is they play a confidence game. They con you into thinking that Big Brother is real and that they are threatening and that they can do something to take you down, when in fact, most of these people who are worried about the government spying on them when they're looking at these videos, there is absolutely nothing to worry about. And I want to give you a point that expresses this. I used to live in Virginia Beach, and I was driving up the I-95 to upstate New York where my parents were, and along the way I got a flat tire. I happened to get a flat tire in an area called Delmarva, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. This is right next to Langley, CIA headquarters, okay? So it turns out that people work at the CIA, they lose their job, and they need to get a job. And they have to get sometimes a mundane job. So I go to this tire place, and the guy who is working behind the desk is ex-CIA. Now, I smile at the guy and start talking to him, and pretty quickly discover that he knows some black ops stuff, because I mentioned a few things, and he said stuff that he shouldn't have known. And so I said, have you ever heard of Project Moondust and Project Bluefly? And this is stuff that I'd heard from Sergeant Clifford Stone, a whistleblower, who's describing the code names of alien crash retrieval programs where UFOs crash and they remove the bodies and the occupants. Okay. He says, how the heck do you know that? I said, well, I have high friends in low places. So then I say, look, man, you guys are the problem. I'm out there trying to do this work. I called the FBI in 1998 because I had a series of prophecies showing me that there was going to be a terrorist attack on New York with a mini nuke. It was going to be sailed into the harbor with a boat. It was going to be detonated, and it was going to basically radiate all of New York City and destroy it. I had very, very specific and elaborate dreams about this, and I discovered from insiders later on that I had the nature of the event and I had the date. And our government already was well aware of this terrorist threat. So who the hell is David Wilcock? How the hell does he know about this? So then the FBI authorized a wiretap on my phone. Now, this is not the typical NSA kind. This is a kind where certain words that I would say would cause an audible click on the phone where the illuminated buttons would actually go black and then light up again. And it would happen when I said certain words. And those words included things like extraterrestrial and visitor. And so I would test it without them knowing. I would say the keywords, the phone would click, the lights would blink, and now I know I'm being recorded. And he confirmed that that was happening to me. And I said, okay, so how many people in my area are you guys spying on like this? He said, well, where do you live? I said, Virginia Beach. He said, Virginia Beach, the type of technology that you're describing, 30,000. 30,000 just in one city? He said, yeah. Okay. How many intelligence agents are actually listening to these tapes? Probably none, was his answer. None? Yeah, probably none. So what are you saying? Are you guys just like recording this stuff on a hard drive and nobody's actually listening to it? He said, David, we have so much information that the needle in the haystack paradox doesn't even begin to describe the difficulty of what is going on. The only time that that data would ever be accessed is if you caused so much trouble that assets were deployed to actually study what you were doing. All they were doing was making a record of what you had to say. Nobody's listening to it. And what he also said was, the groups are so compartmentalized, even individual intelligence agents do not tell the person at the next door what they're doing because they need to keep secrets in order to stay alive. These agencies are totally disorganized. They have totally different computer systems. They have never been able to integrate their computer systems. That's why the Bush administration created Department of Homeland Security. Their original goal was to try to get all of those different intelligence agencies to actually have data in one database. But look, some of these intelligence agencies, I'm not kidding, are still using DOS, old-fashioned PC operating systems. They don't have even Windows on there. And those are archaic dinosaur computers that are not online, they don't have internet capability, and that's the database that stores all this information. So they don't have the ability to just look for you. The rules do not allow the Red Cross workers to be shot. So if you stay in your integrity, if you are a good person, if you are trying to do your best to be honorable, to be loving, to be positive, the cabal cannot get you. I actually believe the stuff that I'm telling you. I would not be doing this if the cabal cannot get you. And this is something that really needs to be spread far and wide. Big Brother is a con game. They cannot go after the people that are doing this. There's only a couple 100,000 intelligence staff altogether, okay? They cannot harass all the people that are doing this. They can't take you down, and therefore, these people know this, and what they've always worried about is the awakening of the public. They are worried about people stepping into their power and understanding that they can be strong, that they can go out there, take decisive action, and courageously take this planet back from the people that are stopping us from getting disclosure, from getting the truth, and from getting the knowledge that we need to enter into the golden age that so many ancient spiritual teachings have predicted. When this disclosure comes about, when these technologies are released, the net effect will be that we will enter into a Star Trek age, a golden era in which we now don't have to pay for energy, there is no need for money at all, and we have much greater lifespans, much greater harmony, and the ability to travel the cosmos, to meet a whole bunch of different people who may have histories in their civilizations that go back hundreds of thousands of years, to meet people who are far more spiritually evolved than we are. We're just going through growing pains right now, an evolutionary awakening. It's like childhood. And as you become an adult, you have to go through an initiation. This is a global initiation that brings us out of childhood, that makes us aware of people who were profiting from our ignorance, who deliberately kept us disempowered and weak to maintain their control, to maintain their power. And as we go through this transformation, you watching this will be someone who can help alert others. Let me say that you watching this can help be someone who can alert others to what is really going on and help keep this whole thing stable so that we get a rapid transition and that the controlled media cannot be used to demonize the alliance as if it were evil, because that's what they're going to try to do. How can we tell who is on our side or not? I would say that the events that will take place where the truth is exposed will show you who is the good guy, because even though there are various groups within the cabal that war against each other and are fighting to control the planet, the one thing they all agree on is secrecy. Nobody wants any of these deeper secrets to be exposed. They want all of it to stay deeply under wraps, because exposure is bad for everybody. Exposure leads to criminal trials, arrests, prosecutions, and a collapsing of their power infrastructure. That is what they do not want. So this is the time where we're going to see hidden truths being exposed, and the people who are doing that for us are people fighting for our freedom and for a positive future.
And how do you know who those people are?
You will know by the events that are taking place. The people right now, to a large degree, are working without credit. For example, I have heard from insiders that 40% of the US military is actually now computer hackers. And so kids get busted for hacking, and they're told you can either go to prison and have a cellmate named Bubba, or you can join the military and become a hacker, but doing it for positive purposes. And these guys get to work from home, but they are under surveillance by other staff, and they are going through countless thousands of hours of surveillance footage of people in the cabal, because there are little hidden cameras that the cabal doesn't know about inside all of their places where they meet, including the Oval Office and the White House, including the Bohemian Grove, all this kind of stuff. So we're seeing now a situation in which all the surveillance footage is being combed through, and at some point, apparently, the Alliance is going to release this footage in which you will actually see notable world leaders talking about their Luciferian belief systems, planning out false flag terrorism, and whoever does that, you can be assured, is fighting for a positive future for us, because nobody who's in the cabal wants any of this stuff to come out, because they all suffer.
So Snowden would be one of those?
Snowden is definitely a positive example.
And do you think there's truth to the fact that he has a lot more information that will be disclosed?
Absolutely, Snowden has far more information. I've heard this from multiple insiders, that Snowden's data that we've seen so far in the public may be only 1.5% of what he actually has, and that the greater body of stuff that's in there goes way, way beyond just this idea that the NSA is surveilling us. There was a huge mistake that was made by the NSA, and that is they were spying on all of these military-industrial complex defense contractor type of entities, and they were bulk collecting all of that intel in their NSA servers. So they had stuff on the secret space program. They had stuff on the work that's being done off planet. They had stuff on these non-terrestrial officers, like what Gary McKinnon found. Snowden's collection got all of that stuff. And the Alliance only actually broke the encryption on the data last year, late last year, 2015. So now they've only had really a few months to actually start going through and find all the best stuff. Over and over again, you see hacks, major hacks in the news. And these hacks are being done by the Alliance. They're hacking into Cabal systems, and then they have a vast team of people combing through the hacks to find the information that's going to bring the Cabal down. The defeat of the Cabal is a mathematical inevitability, and the way that defeat is going to happen will be the release of information that will make the public so enraged that at that point, the public is going to decide what they want to do about this. We don't know exactly when the operation is going to be completed. Now, I will say this. In the past, I was given several different date windows of when the mass arrest was going to happen. And this now goes back about 3 years from the time we're taping, which is in 2016. Multiple attempts have been made to do this, and those attempts were stopped by the Cabal because they have incredible surveillance capabilities and they have artificially intelligent data metrics that allow them to model out future probabilities and see what might happen in the future. So these people have so far thwarted the mass arrest attempts. It does appear at this time that the Cabal is very, very concerned. What I'm hearing is they're moving tons and tons of assets, including personnel, to secret bases they have in South America and even bases under the ice in Antarctica. They are doing their best to try to hide out because they know something is going to happen. We know that there are mass evacuation plans in place. We know that Congress is going to become a ghost town. You'll hear nothing but the cry of the crow and some tumbleweed blowing through the back of the building once this thing happens. They're going to try to escape. They're not going to be allowed to escape. All of them are going to be tracked, and they will be brought to justice. It's going to be one of the most amazing, revelatory moments in our planet's history. My own dreams have told me for a long time that the work that I've done is going to be elevated to much more public prominence once this happens because it will be known to everyone. I'm taking steps in my life right now to prepare for that. I'm not looking forward to it because it means the loss of my anonymity. It means that anywhere I go in public, people will know who I am. And that's going to include some people who will probably think that I was responsible. If they don't like what happened, there's going to be a lot of confusion, a lot of suspicion. But again, the truth will set you free. One of the things that needs to be made clear here is that there are different extraterrestrials out there, some of which are positive, some of which are very negative. So Queen Elizabeth, through John Dee, her court astrologer, gained access to the negative ones. Those negative ones appear to be of a reptilian type of genetic stock, where they look human, but they also have reptilian features, such as vertical slit pupils and scaly skin. This is going to be a real shock for people because it violates the idea of us being the only species in the universe. It violates the idea that we're totally safe. But again, these beings can only do what they're authorized to do. And they can't work directly on Earth. They can only work through humans who do their bidding. That's another part of the rules. They can't just show up and do an alien invasion. That's not going to happen. There are positive, benevolent beings that are preventing that from occurring. So one of the most interesting and bizarre aspects of my journey started in October 2014 when Corey Goode came forward and started to give me information about his work in the secret space program, as he called it. Up until this point, I had spoken to at least 5 or 6 other insiders who had met with extraterrestrials directly. In many cases, they had actually worked in bases off planet. They had given me very specific, detailed information that I had never gone public with because that's how I can sort out the Cabal cannot get you. and this is something that really needs to be spread far and wide. They are, Big Brother is good comes along, and in the first conversation alone, they were never gone public with, because that's how I can sort out truth tellers from charlatans. Corey Good comes along, and in the first conversation alone, there were probably 50 different points of correlation of things that he was saying that I had independently gathered from other whistleblowers. And this includes the idea that ultimately this cabal that we've been talking about is being run by these Draco-reptilian extraterrestrials, which most people think of as demons or the devil. Even the idea, the collective mythological idea of the devil is somehow based on truth, because it's a reptilian type of being with vertical slit pupils, scary, sharp teeth, and a scaly type of appearance to its skin, with claws, this kind of stuff. So, it sounds really crazy, and I totally get that. But when you start talking to 5 people, 10 people who know the same things, and they all independently have said this stuff, I can no longer be comfortable in ignorance and try to stuff this down the memory hole and act like it doesn't really exist. So one of the things that has happened is that these new beings appeared in our solar system in these gigantic spheres that are between Neptune and Jupiter in size. They're really, really massive. And they entered in through the sun and also from the outside in. Our government was aware that they were out there, but they wouldn't respond to hailing signals. They just hung out and they didn't talk. They didn't say who they were or what was going on. That all changed just a few months after Corey started to talk to me, wherein, if you believe this, and I do believe this is actually true, the first thing these beings from the spheres, these gigantic spheres, told the secret space program people was, find this man Corey Good and bring him up here. We want to talk to him. So it actually did happen that Corey was brought up, and all of the intel that he had given me up until then went over into a whole new category, because now he's being brought into the active battle that's being done now. Why did these extraterrestrials do this? I believe the answer is that they saw that I was in a position to take the information that Corey was giving me and to deploy it out there into the public, which we soon did, because I was working for the Gaia Network, and we ended up with a show in which we're doing a half an hour a week of Corey's disclosure called Cosmic Disclosure. So now there's over 52 episodes of that, over a year of him releasing all this stuff, and that show launched only a few months after he was brought up there. So very quickly, we were able to accurately and intelligently deploy the information, just like we're now doing in this video. We need people to know about this, because these changes affect all of us. The cabal apparently has been fleeing to Antarctica, and there is now a massive effort to try to flee the planet in their ships, but those ships are being shot down. There are new craft that have showed up that are essentially triangular shaped, about the size of fighter jets. They're being called Chevron craft. Nobody really knows whose craft they are. It appears to be some kind of surprise secret weapon built by the Alliance here on Earth. It's very high technology, very advanced, and even the Draco reptilians do not have adequate technology to defend against the attacks from these Chevron craft. So their craft are being shot down, and they are being contained now in Antarctica. They can't leave. All of this suggests to me that these are precursor events that will eventually lead to the open exposure and defeat of the cabal and their overlords. And those overlords are being kept here. They're not being allowed to leave, so that as we go through this gradual awakening and we learn what's been done, that the people who did this to us will have to stand trial, will have to be held accountable for the crimes that they committed and brought to justice.
So why doesn't Snowden just release all that information, do you think?
There is a reason why the Snowden documents have not been released in full, and the answer is that the cabal has an internet kill switch. They need to have the particular pieces in play before this information is released, because if the information is released before people are sufficiently angry, then they will think that it's fake or some kind of psyop. So what the Alliance has been waiting for is that their efforts to defeat the cabal are successful enough that it actually does go through a very openly obvious thing that makes everybody very angry. Now, one of the things that the cabal has done is they passed laws at the end of the year 2015, right during Christmas, when everybody's home, nobody's paying attention, they're all having dinner with their family. The cabal actually passed laws, and this appeared in an article on the Huffington Post. It was on the front page. People didn't pay attention to this, in which Congress passed laws that said that if the U.S. declares bankruptcy, which it already is, that they will go into everyone's bank accounts and take their money to bail out the government, just like they did in Cyprus, where everybody got a haircut of 40% of all their assets. Regardless of how much money you have, they just take 40%. That is one of the things that the cabal may try to do to save their own necks when they really get desperate. And if they try to do that, you better believe that people are going to be so angry that then they will be receptive to hearing about the wrong that this group has done. But if you just indiscriminately release that information now, people say, what do you mean? Everything's fine. I got a car, I have food at the grocery store, I drive my kids to soccer practice, and we hang out on the weekend, we go to work during the week. Our lives are fine, everything's fine. What's your problem? Why do you have to be so negative? So what they need to do is wait for things to get obvious enough that people are activated. And videos like this can help that awakening take place, because it's just like an alcoholic who has to hit bottom before they go into recovery. You can raise the bottom. You can decide when you've had enough. As people become more educated, you will learn what's going on and you will see the need for change. And then you'll be able to help other people, tell them to watch this video, tell them to inform themselves, get the truth out. That will bring us to our goal much faster. Never gone public with, because that's how I can sort out truth tellers from charlatans. Corey Goode comes along, and in the first conversation alone, there were probably 50 different points of correlation of things that he was saying that I had independently gathered from other whistleblowers. And this includes the idea that ultimately this cabal that we've been talking about is being run by these Draco-reptilian extraterrestrials, which most people think of as demons or the devil. Even the idea, the collective mythological idea of the devil is somehow based on truth, because it's a reptilian type of being with vertical slit pupils, scary sharp teeth, and a scaly type of appearance to its skin, with claws, this kind of stuff. So, it sounds really crazy, and I totally get that. But when you start talking to 5 people, 10 people who know the same things, and they all independently have said this stuff, I can no longer be comfortable in ignorance and try to stuff this down the memory hole and act like it doesn't really exist. So one of the things that has happened is that these new beings appeared in our solar system in these gigantic spheres that are between Neptune and Jupiter in size. They're really, really massive. And they entered in through the sun and also from the outside in. Our government was aware that they were out there, but they wouldn't respond to hailing signals. They just hung out and they didn't talk. They didn't say who they were, what was going on. That all changed just a few months after Corey started to talk to me, wherein, if you believe this, and I do believe this is actually true, the first thing these beings from the spheres, these gigantic spheres, told the secret space program people was, find this man Corey Goode and bring him up here. We want to talk to him. So it actually did happen that Corey was brought up, and all of the intel that he had given me up until then went over into a whole new category, because now he's being brought into the active battle that's being done now. Why did these extraterrestrials do this? I believe the answer is that they saw that I was in a position to take the information that Corey was giving me and to deploy it out there into the public, which we soon did, because I was working for the Gaia Network. And we ended up with a show in which we're doing a half an hour a week of Corey's disclosure called Cosmic Disclosure. So now there's over 52 episodes of that, over a year of him releasing all this stuff. And that show launched only a few months after he was brought up there. So very quickly, we were able to accurately and intelligently deploy the information, just like we're now doing in this video. We need people to know about this, because these changes affect all of us. The cabal apparently has been fleeing to Antarctica, and there is now a massive effort to try to flee the planet in their ships, but those ships are being shot down. There are new craft that have showed up that are essentially triangular shaped, about the size of fighter jets. They're being called Chevron craft. Nobody really knows whose craft they are. It appears to be some kind of surprise secret weapon built by the Alliance here on Earth. It's very high technology, very advanced. And even the Draco-reptilians do not have adequate technology to defend against the attacks from these Chevron craft. So their craft are being shot down, and they are being contained now in Antarctica. They can't leave. All of this suggests to me that these are precursor events that will eventually lead to the open exposure and defeat of the cabal and their overlords. And those overlords are being kept here. They're not being allowed to leave, so that as we go through this gradual awakening and we learn what's been done, that the people who did this to us will have to stand trial, will have to be held accountable for the crimes that they committed and brought to justice.
So why doesn't Snowden just release all that information, do you think?
There is a reason why the Snowden documents have not been released in full. And the answer is that the cabal has an internet kill switch. They need to have the particular pieces in play before this information is released, because if the information is released before people are sufficiently angry, then they will think that it's fake or some kind of psyop. So what the alliance has been waiting for is that their efforts to defeat the cabal are successful enough that it actually does go through a very openly obvious thing that makes everybody very angry. Now, one of the things that the cabal has done is they passed laws at the end of the year 2015, right during Christmas, when everybody's home, nobody's paying attention, they're all having dinner with their family. The cabal actually passed laws, and this appeared in an article on the Huffington Post. It was on the front page. People didn't pay attention to this, in which Congress passed laws that said that if the U.S. declares bankruptcy, which it already is, that they will go into everyone's bank accounts and take their money to bail out the government, just like they did in Cyprus, where everybody got a haircut of 40% of all their assets. Regardless of how much money you have, they just take 40%. That is one of the things that the cabal may try to do to save their own necks when they really get desperate. And if they try to do that, you better believe that people are going to be so angry that then they will be receptive to hearing about the wrong that this group has done. But if you just indiscriminately release that information now, people say, what do you mean? Everything's fine. I got a car, I have food at the grocery store, I drive my kids to soccer practice, and we hang out on the weekend, we go to work during the week. Our lives are fine, everything's fine. What's your problem? Why do you have to be so negative? So what they need to do is wait for things to get obvious enough that people are activated. And videos like this can help that awakening take place, because it's just like an alcoholic who has to hit bottom before they go into recovery. You can raise the bottom. You can decide when you've had enough. As people become more educated, you will learn what's going on and you will see the need for change. And then you'll be able to help other people, tell them to watch this video, tell them to inform themselves, get the truth out. That will bring us to our goal much faster.